Good morning and welcome to the Breakfast Rundown. I'm Therunee Karunaratne. We're coming to you live and direct from our Newsfirst studios here in Colombo. Well, there is so much going on within the country and around the world, and we on the Breakfast Rundown have got you covered as always. Now, the cabinet has made an important decision with regards to the supply of rice to the market in Sri Lanka. The first session of the 10th Parliament of Sri Lanka is scheduled to take place today, as well as a top US official has just announced that he is also scheduled to visit the island within the next few days. International news this morning is coming in from the Middle East as well as the United States. We have all the details, so do stay tuned with us right throughout. Let's move on to your top story for this morning. The government has decided to grant permission for the private sector to import rice to the country. Cabinet spokesman Minister Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa said that this matter was discussed at yesterday's cabinet meeting. During the meeting, all cabinet ministers had agreed to allow the private sector to import rice. Accordingly, the private sector will take steps to import the necessary stock of rice to the country promptly. Minister Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa also mentioned that any type of rice can be imported in this manner. Meanwhile, a discussion between President Anura Kumara Dissanayake and small and medium-scale rice mill owners took place yesterday at the Presidential Secretariat. During the discussion, the President emphasized the importance of ensuring a continuous and affordable supply of rice to consumers within the coming months. He engaged with the mill owners to identify immediate measures needed to achieve this goal. The meeting also focused on enhancing storage facilities across the country to prevent shortages and to ensure a steady supply of rice to the market of Sri Lanka. Additionally, concerns were raised about the declining availability of Nadu rice for consumption due to its increased use in value-added products. President Dissanayake highlighted the potential benefits of introducing a QR code system to streamline the distribution of fertilizer subsidies and boost domestic agricultural production in the country. Minister of Trade, Commerce, Food Security and Cooperative Development Vasantha Samarasinghe, Laksatusa Chairman Dr. Samita Pereira, officials and small and medium-scale rice mill owners attended this discussion that was held yesterday. Meanwhile, the Disaster Management Centre of Sri Lanka says that all districts across the island have been affected by the adverse weather conditions that arose as a result of the heavy rains that were experienced by the country. According to the latest report that was issued last evening, a total of 234 divisional secretariat divisions have been impacted. The report says that 470,094 individuals belonging to 139,500 families have been affected by disasters linked to heavy rain. The number of fatalities reported is 18. The Disaster Management Centre also reports that 20 individuals have been injured. A total of 103 houses have been completely damaged, while 2,757 houses are reported to be partially damaged due to these heavy rain-linked disasters. Now, the DMC says that 81 relief centres are operational across the country, and these centres are currently sheltering 8,377 individuals belonging to 2,590 families. Well, the Sirasa Shakti Sahanayatra commenced its journey this morning a short while ago from the Sirasa TV head office in Colombo, following multi-religious observances in a bid to ease the hardships faced by our brothers and sisters from around the island who were affected by the adverse weather conditions that Sri Lanka experienced over the past week or so. The collection of donations for the Sirasa Shakti Sahanayatra concluded at 6 p.m. yesterday. Preparations were in place to distribute these items to those facing hardships due to the recent extreme weather conditions in Sri Lanka. People in the northern, north central and eastern provinces have been severely affected by the recent rainfall and floods, which have made daily activities nearly impossible in those areas. In response to this crisis, the Sirasa Shakti Sahanayatra was launched the day before yesterday. Over the past 3 days, 5 collection centres were established to collect and distribute these essential goods. The collection centres were set up at the Sirasa TV head office in Union Place, Colombo 2, Old Khadiresan Vajra Pillar Kovil in Bambalapitiya, Colombo 4. Sri Venkateshwara Mahavishnu Murthy Kovil in Nadimala, Dehivala. Sai Centre of Sri Lanka in New Chetty Street, Colombo 13. Grand Mosque of Colombo, New Moor Street, Colombo 12. Relief packages were packed for safe transport last night to be distributed among those in need. The operation was carried out with the collaboration of the NTV MBC Media Network, Newsfirst, the Gum at the Movement, Stein Studios as well as M Entertainment. Moving on to more local news now. The first session of the 10th Parliament of Sri Lanka is scheduled to commence today at 9:30 a.m, presided over by Speaker Dr. Ashoka Ranvala. The approval of the government's policy statement, which was presented to Parliament by President Anura Kumara Dissanayake on the 21st of November, is also scheduled to take place today. Additionally, the inaugural meeting of Members of Parliament is also set to be held at 2 p.m. today. Meanwhile, U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for the Bureau of South and Central Asian Affairs, Donald Lu, will travel to Sri Lanka, India and Nepal from the 3rd of December to the 10th of December. His trip aims to strengthen cooperation with key partners in South Asia to promote regional prosperity and security. On the 5th of December, Assistant Secretary Lu is set to arrive in Colombo, Sri Lanka to advance U.S.-Sri Lankan joint efforts to promote sustainable economic growth, combat corruption and strengthen people-to-people ties. USA Deputy Assistant Administrator Anjali Kaur and Department of the Treasury Deputy Assistant Secretary Robert Caproth will join the Assistant Secretary to meet with senior government officials from Sri Lanka's new administration and representatives from the civil society. Discussions will deepen ties with the new government, support its efforts to combat corruption and explore how the United States can support Sri Lanka's governance and economic reform agenda through tailored technical assistance, capacity building as well as development programs. Meanwhile, Indian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka, His Excellency Santosh Jha, met with Speaker Dr. Ashoka Ranvala recently. Secretary General of the Sri Lankan Parliament, Kushani Rohanadira, was also present at this meeting. During the meeting, the Indian High Commissioner conveyed his congratulations to the new Speaker and reminded him of the long-standing relationship between Sri Lanka and India. He also expressed hopes to strengthen the ties between the two countries' parliaments and to organize exchange programs for parliamentarians as well as parliamentary officials of the two countries. The Speaker, in his remarks, expressed his intention to further strengthen the relations between Sri Lanka and India and announced that steps would be taken to establish the Sri Lanka-India Parliamentary Friendship Association in the 10th Parliament of Sri Lanka. On to more local news now. The Ministry of Health says that 5 cardiac catheterization units will be set up in hospitals promptly under Japanese loan assistance. Minister of Health Dr. Nalinda Jayathinsa mentioned that the establishment of these units will be completed within a year. The minister also stated that, in addition, efforts will be made to improve the existing units in hospitals in Anuradhapura, Kurunegala and Kandy. It has been decided to establish new units at the hospitals in Badulla and Trincomalee as well. The minister highlighted that steps are being taken to quickly prepare the necessary building facilities and other infrastructure for the establishment of these units. He also pointed out that the new units will help reduce the number of patients on the waiting list for cardiac treatments. Let's move on to news overseas. Our first international news item for this morning is coming in from the Middle East. Israel said it struck targets in Lebanon on Monday evening after vowing to retaliate for an attack by Hezbollah on a military post, with both sides accusing each other of violating last week's ceasefire. At least 9 people were killed by Israeli strikes on 2 southern Lebanese villages, and this is according to the country's public health ministry. The Israel Defense Forces, or IDF, said it struck Hezbollah targets and infrastructure, quote-unquote, throughout Lebanon, while reiterating its commitment to the ceasefire agreement that was recently established. Hezbollah said it was responding to Israeli violations and said it carried out a defensive warning strike, firing mortars at an Israeli army position in an area occupied by Israel. Let's now move on to your second international story for this morning. It's coming in from the United States of America, a rather controversial story that made it to the headlines as well yesterday. Now, the White House has defended President Joe Biden's pardon of his son, Hunter Biden, after repeatedly insisting he had no plans to grant such executive clemency. The press secretary said Biden had pardoned his son, who was facing sentencing later this month in 2 federal cases, to shield him from potential persecution by the outgoing president's political foes. The sweeping pardon covers any potential federal crimes that 54-year-old Hunter Biden may have committed over the course of the decade. Republicans have lambasted this move, with President-elect Donald Trump calling it an abuse and miscarriage of justice. Well, that story brings to a close this morning's edition of the Breakfast Rundown. I'm Therunee Karunaratne. I'll see you again tomorrow right here on TV1 at 7 a.m. Until then, take care. Have a wonderful day ahead.